Now, President Trump is one person, but Dick Costolo, the former CEO of Twitter, back in June, actually tweeted, "Me first capitalists who think you can separate society from businesses are going to be the first people lined up against the wall and shot in the revolution. I'll happily provide video commentary." And then in the Journal, Jonathan, it's just they went and I guess talked to Alexei Navalny, the democracy advocate, scourge of Vladimir Putin, who was poisoned. And he said he gets death threats every day on Twitter and nothing ever happens to him, that there's violence all the time threatened on Twitter and it's selectively enforced. He also says that while Twitter is a private company, we've seen many examples in Russia and China of private companies becoming the state's best friends and enablers when it comes to censorship. So it needs, don't you agree, it needs to be, these edicts need to be enforced on both sides, left and right, whenever violence or any of these things that we don't want published, that it should be equally enforced. And there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
Well, look, I mean, the law is very clear. Again, inciting violence is not expressing an opinion, right? It's a call to arms that threatens lives, and that is not encompassed in the First Amendment. You can't do it on CNBC or Shark Tank. You shouldn't be able to do it on Facebook and Twitter. So you have that. But then I also think, these businesses, to your point, they have a moral obligation as well. And I think look, the Stop Hate for Profit Coalition called on Facebook to make changes this summer when we saw white supremacists subverting the platform. And they did. It took businesses, it took celebrities, it took regulators, and suddenly they started to move. And now Twitter has stepped up in a way that, we commend. We called on Jack Dorsey on Friday morning to permanently ban Trump, and he did. Now, the reality is, I agree with you, companies should not be agents of the state, but companies also shouldn't be agents of chaos. And all we would ask is they apply the same kind of calculus that broadcast networks do and newspapers do, to make sure the content that flows into the mainstream of America isn't undermining that democracy. This isn't, again, abstract. We saw what happened. 5 lives lost on Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon. It's tragic, and it was unavoidable. It was avoidable, Joe. It could have been avoided.
Becky, yeah.
Hey, Jonathan, you compare it to what newspapers and television stations do, and I appreciate that 100%. It's just a lot easier to do it for a television or a newspaper because you're controlling a certain amount of information flow. The greatest strength of these social media platforms is also their greatest weakness. It's just this flood of information that's coming out. I don't want to give them an easy out on any of this. I think they need to be held to account for this. But how do you do it when you have so much that's flooding in all the time? You figure you just write computer programs and it's going to strip off anything that sounds like it might be inciting violence, or do you have to have a human part on top of that, a human component too?
Becky, I think that's a very fair question. And let's just think about this for a moment. In Facebook and Twitter, those are two of the most innovative companies, in the American economy. Frankly, I would say that Facebook alone is the most sophisticated advertising platform in the history of capitalism. They earned $70 billion in 2019. I don't think we have the 2020 numbers yet. So if there was ever a business that could figure out how to leverage its extraordinary capabilities and point it toward, better outcomes, I think that's Facebook. But here's the other thing. New platforms need to build this into their design when they launch. That's why Parler went down. Parler went down last night, and it styled itself as a platform for free speech, and yet it really became a cesspool of hate speech. The content on there killed Jeff Bezos, blow up its data centers, 70 million of us take up arms. Literally, when John Moxley launched Parler, he could have done it with the right guidelines in the first place, and he didn't do it. And that's why companies like Apple and Google and Amazon are saying, you know what, we don't want to be involved with a business that's promoting violence. So we've got to figure this out. And I used to work in Silicon Valley. I know what they're capable of. I'm sure they can do this if they put the resources towards it.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.